So, um, eagle-eared viewers or listeners rather might notice the fact that Joe's not here, and usually I would never record without Joe or Bradley. But looking at what I plan to talk about this week, there was so much Willer and Bradley stuff to where I thought, well, it'd be worth it to do it just to like there's still going to be a lot of content with just me and Bradley. So I thought it'd be worth it.
When the Joes aren't home, the Breaking Bad boys come out.
That's what I'm talking about
Yeah,
because
boy.
we've talked about this on the podcast on and off. But Breaking Bad is my favorite TV show, possibly Bradley's.
It's 100% my favorite TV
There
show.
you go.
We're breaking the seal here.
And it's we've been trying to find like a good time to talk about it. We were kind of mad while Bradley was watching Breaking Bad earlier this year, right?
Oh, man, it might have been really early this year.
Yeah, I think it was all this year because maybe late 2018, but it was somewhere in that bleed range. We would have these really good discussions, like almost episode by episode, and we'd be like, huh, sure, it'd be cool if we had made a podcast about like Breaking Bad or something.
Yeah. It was one of the fastest I'd ever watched the shows. Like, at the time, both of us like worked from home, and around lunchtime, I'd be like, what if I just took a break for like 3 or 4 hours and watched Breaking Bad instead? And then on our work chat, I would send Willer like paragraphs of what I loved about the show. So,
And then I would send paragraphs back, and it was
yeah,
a very
I wish we
romantic
still
time.
had all the paragraphs because there was some
Oh,
good.
they're just gone now, aren't they? Huh?
Oh yeah, they're gone.
Well, if we don't get it all through in this podcast, we will do follow-ups, Breaking Bad discussions. Maybe we'll pull fans for like what is something you'd like to see discussed that no one ever discusses.
Yeah, if anyone ever wants to have any amount of Breaking Bad discussion, tell us
Please,
because we will do it.
we will talk about it. Additionally, the reason why now's a good time to do this is that El Camino, the movie, came out recently, and me and Bradley watched that together, and it's gonna be really good to tie that in. We're gonna do them both together. So spoilers, full spoilers for both.
Yes.
And if you haven't watched Breaking Bad by now, I'm not even gonna give you like a spoiler-free review or summary. Please just go watch it. It is so good. It's slow for most people's standards, but just pay attention to the characters and the filmmaking and just the storytelling, and it is like nothing else.
Can't go wrong.
You cannot go wrong. We have a little bit of a formula we want to follow here.
Yeah, because trying to just tackle this beast without a spirit guide.
Me and Bradley could shoot the shit about Breaking Bad for 8 hours if you want to listen to that, but we're
Yeah,
not.
no,
I
if we
gotta,
want,
we gotta go to sleep and go to work tomorrow, so therefore we can't.
yeah.
So we're gonna talk about the technical aspects first, the main characters, then some supporting characters, and finally try to get themey with it, and then just discuss some of our other favorites. Maybe favorite episodes. We'll throw that in there. Um, Technically speaking, I think Breaking Bad is a really well-made television show, and I think it blends that with its storytelling in really important ways. Like the other day, we watched a video about the music in Breaking Bad. It's really mostly about the music in Better Call Saul, but I watched the Breaking Bad sequence, and it's like just the way music is used in this, for example, it's so important. Where certain characters will have certain thematic elements of their music, and it really comes through when they're cooking meth. Where certain combinations in certain times, in certain periods of times, will have different vibes. So it starts a little messier and more grungy when they're cooking with Jesse early on. It gets a little more classical when you're cooking with Gale. Near the end of the show, when you're cooking with Jesse again, and you're both professionals at this point, you get these really good montages. Probably my favorite one, the one with all the like it has those visual effects of the chemistry happening while it's cooking. I think it's like in season 5, episode 3 or 4 or something. The cooking montages in general are just works of art, like straight up.
Yeah, and like that whole deal with the sound in Breaking Bad, it was really cool because like as people who have had like endless discussions about this show, that was even more stuff that we had like never even thought of. That like there's so much depth to this show. There's always going to be something else that the creators did that you subconsciously noticed, but you just have to pull it out.
And it's really interesting because I've been listening to the podcast at work. Bradley has listened to some of the podcast episodes for Breaking Bad. It's kind of amazing how like off the cuff that each season was, because the story is so tight that it feels like it was a masterpiece that someone concocted in a cave after like 5 years of just thinking on it. But really, Vince Gilligan is just a really good executive producer who can rein in a team of writers and directors and just every portion of the filmmaking, TV making process, and just all bring them in under his wing and make this amazing product. Where some of the seasons, like I think they said 3 in particular, they really didn't know how it was going to end, and season 3 ends incredibly. So it's
Oh yeah.
like just the amount of talent in that writers' room and that film squad is amazing. Um, Other little touches like with the technical making of the show that just make it so impressive is stuff like Mexico just has this weird yellow tint on it all the time, and you just know you're in Mexico as soon as that tint pops out.
Yeah, because like it's such an easy thing because like considering a lot of the places that they are at in Mexico is on the border, and without those like visual cues like the yellow tint,
Mm,
you would be like, okay, well, are they on the border in New Mexico or are they on the border in Mexico?
right.
And without the show ever explicitly saying it, whenever you see that yellow tint, you're just like, oh, we're in Mexico without ever really thinking about like, wait, how did I know we're in Mexico?
The only exception is like that one time where Gus and Jesse go there together because it's a more serious mission. They're going to be there for an extended time. Likewise, as I recall, some of the scenes in Germany when it's like dealing with Madrigal, electric motive or whatever, they're more tinted blue, so you got
Yeah,
that like feel. Um, what are some like all the I mentioned all the cookie montages are great. All the time lapses are really cool. They do a lot of those. The music choice in the show is just fantastic. The camera work is fantastic. There's a scene where Skinny Pete is like going down for a hit of meth, but then it's Badger that comes back up, and he's just talking about a completely different tangent. I think they're talking about Resident Evil 4 versus Call of Duty zombies.
yeah,
Just so much creativity has gone into how the show is made. But that pales in comparison to the incredible writing that the show has. Um, let's talk about the main characters.
yeah. And I figure
Woo!
we'll have a focus on each of the
Yeah.
big boys.
Should we just start with the man himself?
Man himself, Mickey Mouse,
Let's start with Mickey Mouse, aka Mr. Walter White.
Walter White.
Bradley, why don't you lead us off with something? Like how do we tackle this behemoth of a character?
I want to start this off with, and I'm sure many Breaking Bad fans out there have heard this, where George R. Martin of uh
Game of
fuck,
Thrones.
Game of Thrones. I was like, I knew a Song of Ice and Fire, but I forgot what the show's called.
Yeah.
I yeah, George R. Martin, the man himself, whose series is known for like these psychotic and torturous characters almost. He said that he has never written a character as monstrous as Walter White.
Holy
Which
shit, did he say that?
he said that
That's not true.
he,
He has.
at the very least, that's his take on it. And man, by the end of season 4, like I feel like up until the very end of season 4, no matter how bad Walter got, even if I was able to be like, that was a terrible thing, he shouldn't have done it, there was at least some level, like some molecules of sympathy that I had for him. And once we get to season 5, I see him as a totally different person than we had in season 1. In season 1, I am like, this is just a good guy who got a bad lot in life, and he is doing the best he can with what he's got. And by season 5, I can hardly stand to look at him. I'm like, no, this is a monster whose true nature never came out because he actually had a pretty good lot in life. And I don't know, like
I
the
think
way
that's
I view
spot
it,
on,
just
really. And
yeah,
I can actually let's track down his character development real quick
oh yeah,
because there's a point that season 5 flip that you were talking about. There's a very specific and very well done build up to it, right? So you have season 1, which Walter is emasculated at his own birthday party. You can immediately tell that he's a man who is looked down upon by Bogdan, by Hank, by every one of his students. He is a bitch, like that's what the world views him as,
yeah,
and he's kind of accepted it for the most part. He's he's just down to live like this until Hank gives him the idea to come for the ride along, and he sees Jesse and he sees how much money can be made. He gets his cancer diagnosis, so he says, "Fuck it, it's time to do it." Right. So I think that's a really good starting motivation. He's doing it for his family, but also you can tell that the man has a chip on his shoulder.
yeah. Like the most important thing here is that the people writing these characters have a good grasp on what this character is and what they want. Because to link the very first episode and the very last episode, it isn't up until the very last episode, Walt still believes that he's doing all this for his family. But in the last episode, we see him finally admit to himself and to us,
And to
you,
Skylar,
yeah, he's like, you know what? No, I did it for me. It was fun. I liked it. I was
that
good at it. And from,
that line is incredible.
even though Walt doesn't know it the whole series, from the first episode, we could have known that for ourselves. You can see that there's something else to this. Like, he's doing it for his family, but he needs this.
Vince did something amazing here that I really need to take into writing of my own, which I do as a hobby.
Yeah.
Um, in episode 4 in Gray Matter, Walt is given an out that early into the show, like almost immediately off the gate.
Oh,
He
yeah.
is giving his escape for his money problems. He doesn't take it, and partially is the bad blood him and Gretchen have. You see a little bit more of Gretchen in season 2, and Walt really does not like her, and does not like the patronizing way that they try to help him.
Yeah.
But it's also that chip on his shoulder again. He wants to do something special. So he keeps driving and driving and getting himself in dangerous situations. You can tell the adrenaline he has after he blows up Tuco's office. He pushes to work with Tuco even though Jesse's against it. Jesse's the one that gets beat up for it. And it's only at the end of season 1 where Tuco kills Nose Dose, I think was his name.
Uh, I would know I know what he looks like, but
Yeah. He kills him, and then Walt is kind of like, okay, maybe we need to escape. But by then it's too late. He's already gotten himself too deep. So after they kill Tuco, this is like now we're at season 2. He's already got a taste for the danger of this life, right? Yet he still pushes Jesse to keep working. They're like, "Oh, why don't we take over the streets? It's Walt's idea. He's the one who's pushing for this confidence." And he's also the one that pushes Jesse to distribute and pushes Jesse to chase down people that robbed him. And he's the one putting him in these dangerous situations, bossing him around, and it's greed. Like, he's not taking it slow. He's not heeding Jesse's warnings that like we can't just come into territory and just take it over that simply. And he's right because Combo dies as a result. And he has the audacity to say, "Oh, which one was that again?"
yeah. And he's got his first taste of this world, and he came out of the Tuco situation alive, and he just kind of has this feeling of
I can
being
do it. Yeah, I can push it.
yeah,
Good. Let's put a pin in that. How he feels after coming out of the Tuco situation, because yeah, we're gonna come back to that. Also, interesting to say, he killed a character as early as season 3. He had to kill Nacho, not Nacho. Sorry, Crazy 8.
yeah, or episode 3 rather.
Yeah, sorry. As early as episode 3, he's out here killing people.
Man, like season 1 of Breaking Bad had excellent pacing.
Yeah, And I think it's the worst season even. Um, season two, we were talking about at this point, right? He's pushing Jesse.
Yeah.
He pushes Jesse into a state of depression. Jesse finds Jane, and he finally has something good in life. But they're both fuck ups, and it weighs heavily on Walt that she's blackmailing him, and that he's losing Jesse. And this is kind of an interesting point of the story, where I'm gonna go back a couple episodes here and talk about 9 Days Out, which is one of my favorite episodes.
I love 9 Days Out.
That episode is fucking killer. Where they go out into the desert and try to cook, and the RV breaks. That episode is such a good showing at this point of the bond that Walt and Jesse have built. And I think this is my favorite aspect of. I think the characters is Walt and Jesse's relationship. I think it's so interesting and it has so many layers.
Like, that episode hits every single variation of their relationship. We get, like, they go through, like, the strictly business part of the relationship of that episode, and then they finish their cook, and they're like, fuck yeah, they high five.
They high five, feel so good. While they're cooking, you got these senses of Walt giving Jesse shit and berating him, and Jesse being evasive to authority. You get some of that in the beginning of the cook.
Yeah, and then, like, by the end of the episode, we also get the aspects of they, on some level, feel like family. It's like a father-son type deal.
It's when Walt reveals that his cancer is back out of remission.
Yeah.
And Jesse lets out this story about his aunt. No, is it at this point? Yeah, he's like, I used to take care of my aunt, and she had cancer, and that's how I know.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
He doesn't tell the raccoon story until later. But like, it was this really nice bonding moment. Let's step into El Camino for the first time.
Yeah.
In El Camino, we get a flashback directly after this scene.
Yeah, like right after the events of 9 Days Out.
Yeah, they're at the hotel, getting separate rooms like they said. Something really interesting about this is you gotta keep in mind, I've seen some complaints where it's like, Walt will never say what he did in this scene because he doesn't admit that until the end of the series. This is the closest Walt has come to his mortality, to where like he really walked out into the desert, stared off into the nothingness, and just thought to himself, like, this is the end. We're gonna die here. He needed Jesse's motivation to build the battery. And as he's talking to Jesse, he's doing something that they never really do, and it's talking about Jesse's future. They very rarely really talk about Jesse's future. The only other times I can really think about them doing this is when he's talking about his future with Andrea later on in the series. This is interesting because this lets Jesse kind of talk about his life, and it lets Walter at that moment, after this post-death almost moment, kind of reflect on how young Jesse is and how much life he has to go. And he says probably the best line in the movie, and a line that completely encapsulates and reminds me why Walter White's such a good character, where he's like, you're lucky you didn't have to wait your whole life to do something special.
Yeah, and like I'm getting goosebumps, but like that's Walt like almost admitting to himself why he's really doing all this.
The way I see this is in a small moment of clarity. He let slip his own real emotions without even understanding how real they were. And that's why I think it works for him to say this at this point, is because of the events of 9 Days Out. I can believe him letting that slip. Yeah. You were going to say something?
Yeah, it's just like he might not have even really known what he was saying. Like, or he obviously was conscious of the words he was saying, but he didn't realize the level of introspection he had about himself there.
The level of truth that his words spoke to his entire character motivation. Yeah. It might have felt like it was something offhanded to him, but the way that scene just kind of drops it there, it's also interesting because Jesse's talking about in that scene and in 9 Days Out, it's like, don't worry, man, your family's gonna get your money after you die from the cancer that's back. And after he says that, Jesse doesn't say anything. And, like, for a moment, it's like he's also considering the fact that he's not doing this for his family. At least that's how I think that's a way
Yeah.
you could read that scene, which is really interesting. Um, and it's also a good scene to just show it shows all the aspects of the relationship too. Because Jesse's like, "Oh, you don't remember me graduating? You were on the fucking stage."
That was hilarious.
And then Walt says that, and he's like, "What about your future?" It shows his dad's side with Walt, because Walt is his second son. Um, Also, interesting thing in season two is after he loses his cancer. Ooh, this is important to bring up actually. After his cancer goes into remission in early season two, he punches the. Or is that late season two?
Whenever it is,
It is
like,
late. It is late. Because it's after 9 days out. He wasn't. The cancer wasn't actually back. He thought it was back because he saw the scans incorrectly.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, Once he figures that out, he punches the shit out of his own reflection because, and we're gonna get to this in the theme section. I think one of the primary themes in Breaking Bad is escaping your own guilt.
Yeah.
And in Walter's mind, he thought he would die before he would have to face the guilt of his consequences, or the consequences of his actions and his guilt and all that. Which I think is deeply powerful, which feeds into probably you say the season four is the moment where you can really lose Walt. I think if you look back on it, and it's amazing that season three was able to reverse our opinions on this, but the moment he lets Jane die is such a disgusting, vile moment,
Oh
and it's like that. This is the moment your soul has died.
yeah. That was like that's to this day it's still like top three best moments in Breaking Bad for me. And I
Yeah.
remember sitting there while she was like dying, and I consciously thought to myself, I was like, "This is Breaking Bad."
Yep,
Like,
I think that's the quintessential Breaking Bad moment. Um, so incredible. Season three, I don't. How do they do it, man? Because season three kind of makes you forget about that, and
because
and like kind of
he's
forgive him.
to do.
Is it because like the drive to of him working with Gus and like the money potential that he's about to make, like maybe that's what like gets us back in. Because it is fun to watch, as disgusting and horrible as Walter can be. It's also like feel good to watch his plans work out and him rise to the top. So maybe that's part of like what draws us back into his character at that point. Also, Skylar has found out about him, so you kind of feel somewhat bad. We'll talk about Skylar
Yeah,
in a bit too. And his working relationship with Gus does not go well. Um, Very early on, he doesn't like working with Gale. He understands that Gale is kind of learning his own recipe. It's not going to work out. He gets Jesse to work with him. Jesse, at this point, is really already beaten up by the fact that he lost. What the fuck's her name? I just said it. Jane. Yes.
he's convinced it's his fault.
Yeah. And Walter goes on and pushes him to kill Gale in the final play of season three in one of the best double episode 1-2 punches. And here he is, like, for his own survival and Jesse's survival too. You're like, I do generally think he cares about Jesse. Some people swear by the fact that he was using him all along. I definitely think they had like a deeper emotional bond, but he's also like, he can be a piece of shit to Jesse. It's an abusive relationship, and he drives them into a bigger depression just to keep their survival. You get the amazing box cutter moment, and season four is just equally as tense. Where now it's like, well, we're gonna keep working here because Gus has no other options, but also, as soon as he finds a good way to kill me, he will. And that kind of drives him to do horrible things, like say poisoning Brock to get Jesse on his side.
That was the reveal that he actually indeed he indeed poisoned Brock was the moment where Walt was just he was firmly in that monster territory and was never going to get out of it for me.
And the thing, it's well built up to it, where oh, we skipped over Fly. We got to double back to Fly, but maybe we'll do it in the Jesse section. Um, it's important that like I felt the build up to this was really good because he was losing Jesse, because Gus was playing them against each other. He was put in a situation where his own ego and Hank's pressure was making it impossible for either him or Hank to both live through the situation. And it just becomes this thing where like you build up to the crawl space moment, which is one of the best moments in television.
Ooh.
Ooh, where he, out of options, goes into that crawl space and loses his goddamn mind. What's happening? Okay, we're back. Bradley had to get food, which is fair.
The Grubhub guy really wanted to talk to me.
What was it? A good conversation? Did he want in on this Breaking Bad talk?
I'm sure it would have been a fun conversation if I wasn't really wanting to get back to the microphone.
We were just talking about how all those decisions did back Walter into a corner, and you gotta hand it to him. His play was kind of genius and very risky.
It was mindful.
He lets Jesse point the gun right at his forehead, man.
Oh, yeah.
And we get back to this moment where we started talking about, where after he kills Gus in a horrifying play, which uses his own weakness, which is Hector, along with Hector's willingness to get revenge, and bombing a hospital or a nursing home. Jesus Christ. You can tell why Skyler is fucking terrified of him at this point. He will do anything. And this is the point where the real Walter White comes out. Some people are like, man, there's people that, and I've gone back and watched episode discussions and like try to get as much of a idea as I can of people's thoughts. There are some people that are with Walter all the way. Skyler's a bitch. Jesse's a little punk bitch. Walter all the way. He's so cool. He's totally doing this for this family. You know, those kinds of people.
Yeah.
They think that season 5 they went too hard. Where it's like, oh man, Walter's making me uncomfortable now.
Like, no,
you fucking idiot. You just didn't see all along. And the switch there is that after conquering these unbeatable odds, after he fucking lost his mind in that crawl space, after he had to drive himself to get Jesse on his team, and setting up this elaborate plan to kill Gus, he feels invincible. To the point where, like, during the magnet heist, he feels on top of the world. He has the bravery to go ahead and start cooking again and bossing Mike around. And it's like, this is Walter White after the biggest victory of his life, which circles back to how hard he pushed after Tuco. Every defeat levels him up to a new high. Oh man, I think that really covers a lot of his arc, because then you have the moment where he finally decides to step out of the life.
Yeah.
Which is a big moment. Like, even he's like, okay, I've made too much fucking money. He kills Mike over like pure ego. He even, like, as soon as he kills him, he's like, I could have gotten the list from Lydia. And he regrets it, but it's too late. You pulled the trigger, you fucking asshole.
It's too late.
His wife hates him, but, you know, she comes back around mostly out of safety and worry for her family. We'll talk more about Skyler coming back around, but things are going well there at the end of, like, the first half of season 5, until Hank finds out. He puts the pressure on him. Jesse turns on him, and he is forced to just destroy it all. He ruins every single relationship at the end of season 5. There is no one that loves him.
Yeah.
He gets Hank killed, which from episode 1, he would not sacrifice Hank or Jesse. Like, he just refused. If it came down to, like, there was times where even Saul's like, maybe you should get rid of one of them, and he's like, how fucking dare you?
Like, no, we're not gonna do that.
Much like your girl Taylor, it has to be his idea for him to be okay with it.
Oh yeah, he has to get himself there.
Yeah, once he gets himself properly motivated, he can do any atrocity. But you know what? At the end of the day, those last 2 episodes felt bad for him. Maybe you're a little. I feel like you're a bit harsher on him than I am. Fairly.
Man, Walt, like, you know, it sucks. My heart goes out to some part of him, but he made his bed.
I guess you could say shit happens, bitch.
Shit happens, bitch.
I still, man, watching him in the cabin with Ed. By the way, did you know Ed's actor died like 2 days ago?
Did
Right
like
after the movie
right off
came
the
out.
El Camino debut.
Damn, rough. Rest in peace to the Vacuum Man. Um, and then like his final push, he's able to finally admit it to Skylar. They get some resolution on all their horrible past. He even gets some sort of guilt for, I guess, what he did to Jesse. He frees him after he sees just how terrible his life became. And it's like, that is such a tragic end for a man who turned himself into a monster or unleashed the most monstrous sides of himself.
Walter, you son of a bitch.
Oh, what good analysis. Do you have any closing thoughts on Walter? Because we got to move on to some of these other boys.
He's one of my favorite like written characters of all time.
He's,
I really
yeah.
love. I really love him.
He's an incredibly. He's funny. He's intimidating. He's a goofball. He's terrifying. He's horrifying.
He's got it all, ladies.
What a package. And that Bryan Cranston beard, he got it's iconic now. Let's talk about Jesse. We've covered a lot with Jesse concurrently to Walt because and we'll get back to some of the Walt stuff when we go back to the theme section, especially avoiding guilt and unleashing your true monster are two real themes here. Jesse just gets pushed around, man, and Jesse is the most tragic character in the show, and you just feel bad for him.
Catch a break. Like life is out to get this boy.
He says it in season 3 after Hank beats the shit out of him. Ever since the day he hooked up with the great Heisenberg, his life has gone to shit. He's lost everyone he cares about. His relationship with his family is strained. Jane has died at that point. It's like, and that's kind of a thesis statement to this show.
Yeah, he's kind of not wrong.
And at the same time, Walt pushed him to be a it's not even a better version of himself, but he did push him to apply himself like a teacher would,
Yeah.
It's a weird thought because like he was over here cooking shit with Chili P, and he ends the show being as good of a cook as Walter.
But at what cost?
But at what cost? Well, let's go through it a little bit. Season 1, getting pushed around all the time. He doesn't have much going on at this point. He's just a likable character who kind of is putting up with Walter's shit, like Walter's killing people at his home, and he's melting his tub, and he's having to deal with Tuco, who just will abuse Jesse because he knows he's the weak link. By season 2, that's when it gets real bad, because Jesse's really forced to manage territory, get his guys in the line, chase down people who stole his money, which is the first time we get to see him with a child, where Jesse definitely, well, second time, I guess, his little brother. Jesse definitely has a soft spot for children. And, I mean, he's not a great guy by any means, but he has a good heart. I think that's fair to say, right?
I think any moment where we see Jesse interacting with children like his own brother or that kid in season 2 or Brock, I think it is showing that he's the kind-hearted guy who either made some bad decisions in the past or just kind of had a raw deal.
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
You can definitely tell, like, he even had an artistic side, he had some aspirations, but his life just kind of went down the shitter. And really it's because he became a junkie in high school, like, you have the story of him making that box. And I think that's such a powerful story that he tells at the drug meetings. And he's like, I worked so fucking hard to make this box. I was pissed off that he really called me out as like, is that all you can do? And I asked myself, is that all I can do? And it wasn't. He could do a lot more. And he was proud of his achievements, and then he sold the box for weed. And I think that's such a encapsulated aspect of his just entire character arc,
Oh, yeah.
He applies himself, but at the end of the day, he still has to be the bad guy. Duh. Um, um, one of the things if we're talking about Jesse, you gotta talk Jane's death, right?
Oh yeah.
Season 2, end of the season, that reverberates through his life so hard. Combo's death already had him in a bad state of mind, which is what pushed him back into doing drugs, which is what drew Jane in, and then it cost her death. Um, and it's insane how he goes to rehab, he views himself as the bad guy, and it's like he puts all this pressure on himself, which is a little earned, but also like it was Walter. Like Walter could have saved her. He pushed you to this point, and he's not realizing that at this point because he feels so bad about himself and letting Jane die that he doesn't realize that Walter is also to blame and that he's not as bad as he thinks, but he will push himself to be that bad.
Oh fuck! Sorry, I was sneezing. I had my microphone muted. I was sneezing like a motherfucker.
You good?
Oh, I'm good.
Um, and at this point, like Jesse gets back to cooking. Well, when he's out of rehab, right? He does some really disgusting shit. Like he tries to sell meth to that girl at the gas station. And then worst of all, I think this is the worst thing Jesse ever did. Maybe above killing people, because like those were tough situations that he was in. He had Badger and Skinny Pete try to sell to addicts.
Yeah, he preys on these people at the support group.
And it's like, even they're like, man, we're kind of into it. Like, we're kind of doing well here. He's like, come on, why are you guys being such bitches? Like, what do I even bring you here for? I'll do it myself. And it's not until Brock comes into the picture, he's just trying to get it in with Andrea. He's like, his humanity snaps back on. He's like, this is a mom with a son, and I'm trying to do these terrible things. He kind of evens out at that point of season 3, you know?
She asks him for some meth, which is the entire reason he started talking to her. And he's like, you're going to get high with a kid coming home?
Yeah.
And, like, he will just not let her.
Yeah. And it's just really, like, so what does this say about his character? You know, like, he thinks he's only good at one thing. He tries to cook, you know? He tries to cook meth by himself. He tries to sell it. He tries to skim off of Gus. He doesn't like authority, and he has to be the bad guy. And he's good at it. And it's just kind of tragic, you know. He can't escape it. There's a character in another show that you should definitely watch that really encapsulates this idea of not being able to escape your inner, let's say, inner evils.
That show is Demon Slayer, out on Crunchyroll right now.
That show is Better Call Saul. Which I will talk about one day, and oh my god. Anyways, let's talk about Fly, because we skipped over it. People don't like Fly. Some people don't.
Those people are subhuman brainlets.
I'm glad it's finally out into the world. Because you know what, Bradley? You're right.
Fly is genius.
The same people that don't like Fly are the people that don't like El Camino, because they're like, oh, this didn't need to exist. I've seen quite a few of those. And I'm like, oh, you probably didn't like Fly, because you're one of them. Here's why I think Fly is genius. It ties into the theme of guilt so hard, where the Fly itself is a symbol of Walter's guilt, and as well as the symbol of his deteriorating control of the situation. He can't kill this Fly, and he also can't take control of being under Gus's thumbs, and it's just all manifesting into this symbolism and this great episode of just Walt and Jesse. You get to see so much of the relationship. You get to see Walt when he's kind of like sort of high from resisting his sleep meds that Jesse tricks him into taking. You see him almost come out with the truth, and you can tell that's the moment of guilt that will eat away at him. The guilt that he can't escape is that.
Yeah, and like the Fly representing this guilt, Jesse can't see or notice the Fly in the episode until the topic of conversation moves to something that makes him feel guilt.
Shit, did he only see it after Jane comes up the first time?
The whole episode, he's like, "How do we even know there's a fucking fly in here? I haven't seen a fly the whole time." And then they kind of lay down and they start talking about life. And whenever the topic finally moves to these things that make Jesse uncomfortable, he sees the fly and he's like, "Holy shit, we have to kill it."
Didn't it come up earlier though? I remember that scene where he smacks Walter in the face.
Uh, that was my understanding of it. I watched it last week, but I also was doing other stuff while I was watching it.
I need to rewatch that because one thing we can say for sure is the fly is more prominently there when all that guilt is coming up. That's when it comes into a vulnerable spot. So at least it has that going for it. And also the fly, there was another aspect of Walt it represents. He's talking about his guilt. The fly is there at the end of the episode. No matter what they do, it's still flashing in the corner of his mind. And Walt just kind of stares up to it. That realization that he can't escape it.
Oh yeah.
And it's, oh man, it's incredible. That episode, one of my favorites. We'll talk about some other bangers coming out down the line. But okay, Jesse kills Gale. That really fucks him up. He parties for days straight until Mike can straighten him up. And this starts a really cool relationship of Mike and Jesse, which I really enjoy. Because at the end of the day, Jesse's a good, loyal dude. And while Gus just try to use that as a move, the way that he bonds with Mike and the way that he eventually bonds with Gus and Gus comes to trust him just shows you that, like, even someone who said, I will never work with a junkie, will go on to see this value in Jesse. And even Hank utilizes this loyalty and honestly abuses it. But then again, everyone did. Walt abused his loyalty, Gus abused his loyalty, and Hank abused his loyalty.
Jesse's just too good for this world.
At the end of the show, the state that Jesse's in is horrifying.
Oh yeah.
Having to be forced as a drug slave for a whole year, with fucking Todd. Fucking shoots a child, Todd. God damn. We can talk a little bit about that, because, like, the moment where Jesse finally breaks free of Walter is after the death of Drew Sharp. Walter is still pushing. He still wants his empire. You get that amazing scene of him at the Walt's residence having dinner with them, which is such a good scene. And it's like, he's like, no, I can't keep going. Walter's mad. He won't give him any money. And it's only after Walt kills all of the men in one of the best scenes in the show, where he kills all of the people who were liable to snitch in 2 minutes. At that point, Walter gets to, get his life straight, and he eventually reconnects with Jesse there at the end. Which is right before shit really hits the fan in the second half of season 2, where Jesse has all this blood money. His guilt has come back to him. He can't take it. He's just trying to get rid of it, and that gets him contact into Hank, and the rest is history, Which, I guess leads us into El Camino talk. This will be the bulk of the El Camino talk. I really love this movie, Bradley. What did you think?
I think it's a really good movie, and I think it's not what a lot of people were expecting, which, like, I think a lot of people were expecting, like, the drama of Breaking Bad and, like, the mastermind big plays that we're used to, because we followed, like, Walt and Gus for so long.
Maybe they were expecting, like, a new adventure.
Yeah, but it's about Jesse, and it's about him trying to get his life together. It's about, like, looking, like, what does someone look like after going through the things that he has? And El Camino is trying to answer that, I think.
There's a very distinct theme about Jesse throughout the show, and that he's the dog, the rabid dog. He's always shown with dog imagery. When he doesn't go with the vacuum guy, we see a dog walk by the street. There's these shots where he's buying a gun at that dog restaurant where, like, there's a wiener dog shaking his tail. He is a uncontrollable dog that is also used by people.
Yeah.
And there's also a secondary theme that goes really deep into El Camino of Jesse not being able to pull the trigger. Jesse is very reluctant to kill in certain sequences of the show. He's not. He thankfully doesn't have to kill Crazy Eight or the other guy because he was just dead. He's forced to kill Gale, and that fucked him up dearly. He then is forced to kill the guys at the shootout, but he's very shook as he's shooting at them. And that's like in the Mexico sequence. He builds up the courage to go shoot those two gangsters, but like he's shaking as he's gonna do it, and that's before he kills Gale. So like he has this like flip floppy like bad relationship with having to kill people. Like he's been driven to it. There's sometimes where he can't do it, but it really comes into play in El Camino, I think, where if you go off of the ending of Breaking Bad, he can't shoot Walter, and that's a moment of victory for him actually because do it yourself. He finally he's finally able to resist Walter and like not get worked by him for once. He refuses to shoot the cop who he believes is a cop, which gets him in that incredibly tense situation in Todd's apartment.
Oh yeah.
He refuses to shoot Todd because he's just a broken man who just the thought of him killing Todd and losing Brock and having all that guilt, he would rather stay a slave and get his pepperoni pizza. Just heartbreaking scene. But then at the end, if you loop back to the very first words we hear in the movie, it's Mike telling Jesse that he can't erase the wrongs he's done. There's no going back. He needs to find his own path. El Camino means the path. Every single plot line of that movie has Jesse faced with an incredible obstacle, be it Todd and his emotional obstacle, be it the police getting a lock on his car, be it the fake cops from the welding place, be it Ed being a hard ass about their first encounter and having to get the exact amount because he's such a businessman, such a professional. And at the end of the movie, and it might be a little melancholy as like as a last thing to leave on, but Jesse realizes that he needs to pull the trigger and kill these guys who have wronged him in the past, so it's got that justification. And thankfully, that guy was high out of his mind and wanted to have a cool Western shootout, because, like, he's definitely the kind of macho guy who'd be like, hey, this is a once-in-a-lifetime, like, opportunity. And he pulls the trigger, and it's like to forge his new path in Alaska, he had to take another life. And I think that's just that's just where his character arc went. There was no easy answers. There was only obstacles in the path of Jesse Pinkman. And unfortunately, realistically, he had to break through those obstacles with his own resolve at the cost of another man's life. And it's just like, you know what, Jesse? I understand. It wasn't easy for you at any point.
So yeah, why don't you people think about that instead of going how come he didn't get to shoot Walter in the movie?
I also really like Jesse saying to his family that a really emotional scene where he's like, "Don't be sad. You did as much as you could."
Oh yeah, just like I thought what he was going to say was "I'm sorry." What he actually said was a million times better, and probably what his parents actually needed to hear.
Yeah.
Because they heard him say "I'm sorry" probably hundreds of times.
Yeah. And this was a realization on his part that I did fuck up and you guys tried your best. Which is like really powerful because when he's left his parents off in Breaking Bad, it was like very bittersweet because he had to trick them into getting their house, you know, like that was like a last fuck you, and that's the last we saw of him. Which is very disheartening, but I'm glad he got that closure. That movie was a very good closure to Jesse, to his themes, and to his character arc.
Jesse good.
Those are the two main characters. Let's talk about Hank. Give me some Hank thoughts.
So from episode 1, like for me, it was a given that eventually Hank was going to find out about Walt. Like there's no way he was going to.
And there's so many fun scenes of him like the hints hitting him in the face, but he just can't see Walter in that way.
Yeah, and Hank gets really cool. he gets his really own cool development um, as the show goes on.
Mostly
He
like season 3-ish is when it really starts with the cousins.
Yeah, I think the thing I like most about Hank's character arc is that he's very much like the macho man, and he is like a total superstar in his particular department. And we get parts of the show that challenge that, where he transfers to a place where he's not the superstar and he doesn't know where he belongs. And early in the show, he has totally dominated these people in drug busts or in shootouts before. Um, but after what happens in El Paso, he has to keep up that image he's always had, where he is like really blasé about death and these people that he's out to catch, when in reality he's terrified.
Yeah, and part of it is also him having to kill Tuco. It's you get the sense it was his first big shootout, and he's shook by it. But he's getting trophies for it. He's getting his grill, and he throws the grill away because it's a bad reminder, and he doesn't want that there. It's kind of like a symbol of guilt or something like a symbol of his own mortality, where he doesn't want to face it, so he wants to get rid of it. It's his fly at the moment.
And
Um,
Hank is great. I don't think there's obviously nearly as much to say about him as there is about Walt and Jesse, but
I
um,
will say I like him as much as them two. Actually, I think Hank is expertly written. I think him dealing with his PTSD, learning to persevere through it, even if it caused friction with his wife. Watching him climb back up, watching he's such a fantastic fucking detective too. There's some moments where Hank is like the lawful equivalent of Mike, where he's so resourceful and he's so smart.
yeah, going into episode one, I never knew that we were going to dive as deep into Hank as we did.
And I'm really glad we did because he served as a really good antagonist for season 5. His death is the climax of the show. It is what Walt has been avoiding, and it is what starts us off in the best TV episode of all time, Ozymandias.
Boy,
Boy, rest in peace, Hank. And
he got
like he had to dive into some dark levels there to get to Walt, because he had to kind of be ready to sacrifice Jesse. He was like, "Oh, why are you feeling sorry for the kid? He's just a murderer, and if he dies in this meeting with Walt, that's good for us." Like he's so Heisenberg has been his white whale the whole show, and it's like if I can catch this Heisenberg, it's really all I care about. It's what will make me feel like it was worth going through all this. He even left El Paso to keep pursuing it, half because of PTSD, but half because he saw that this was a really important bust.
yeah, like if he just gave up on it, then it was all for nothing.
At some point, he laments the fact that no one talks about who catches Pablo Escobar, the actual heroes.
Yeah,
He wants to be the man who can stop these evils, partially for the success, but I also think partially he just has a very strong sense for the law. He will bend it sometimes, but in a way where like any cop is a little dirty. Um, he he just does he has that conversation with Walter about the cigars, and Walter's like, "Well, how come we're smoking these cigars? Because they're illegal." And Hank is like, "No, these drugs destroy people's lives, and I will not tolerate them." That's basically what he says. God, there's so many small things that just feed into every aspect of these characters. Bradley,
yes.
Skylar White, the worst woman on television.
Fucking people, people are oh Skylar. Here's the thing, I feel like not enough people make the different. Not enough people distinguish between a character that they hate and a poorly written character. Because a lot of people will be like, "Ooh, Skylar's such a terrible character. Why is she in the show?"
Yeah.
And
I
like,
have a coworker who was like, the show would be better without Skylar and Walt Jr.
it's like no, like she has to be there. And I feel like a huge reason Skylar is so hateable is that we follow Walt so much, and so I think even if we recognize his faults as a person, we're still either consciously or subconsciously on his side. So whenever she grills him, we're like, "Fuck off." But if you view things from her perspective, like her husband is just not communicating, and he's leaving, and he's acting strange, and he has the second cell phone, and he's just destroying everything. And that's even before she finds out that he's dealing this drug that she's seen destroy the lives of people through Hank.
And at that point, he is straight up murdering and exploding places. So it just gets darker and darker, and he's abusing her in her own home. There's those scenes of like Walter creepily like behind her, trying to like, oh, everything's okay, baby, and like trying to like kiss her neck and shit. That shit's gross.
But Skylar's naggy.
Now here's the thing: Skylar is really annoying in the first few episodes, but like they're also in a bad situation. She's like, well, that's the credit card we don't use, so she's definitely like written to be a little bit annoying. But also like she has so many positive traits where she's a good mom, she's supportive to Walt, despite the fact that he never amounted to anything, and she just has, and her son has, is it cerebral palsy that Walt Jr. has?
Cerebral palsy, yes.
And like she's taking it all by stride. She's supportive for the cancer, you know. And then when the criminal stuff starts happening, she's so smart. She is so good at like. I love it when she pretends to be a dumb blonde so Ted can get out of the situation. I like how she's the one that makes the gambling plan and the car wash plan viable.
Yeah.
She's the one who helps Walt when he's trying to avoid Hank. It might be her idea to make the confession tape even. Like, she is so resourceful, and like there are so many cool qualities to this character.
I don't think either of us ever hated her or angry with her to the degree that a lot of people seem to be. The exception for me might be
I fuck Ted.
yeah, I was like, go fuck you.
Legendary.
That was such a powerful 3 words. Holy shit.
She also has those moments where it's like, Anna Gunn is a fantastic actress. All the actors we've talked about so far are fantastic. Yeah. But like, the moment where she like tries to commit suicide, it's mostly like a fake attempt just to get the kids out of the house.
Yeah.
And she's like, every single moment that they're not here with you is a victory, and I just have to wait. And Walter says, "Wait until what? Until the cancer comes back and you die." And it's like, oh fuck.
Yeah. I
that
feel
is
like
some hard hitting shit.
I feel like actors who play characters that are like meant to be hated deserve like a very special award. There are a lot of people who are idiots and cannot separate the actor from the character.
Yeah.
And I've heard like, you know, obviously I haven't seen Game of Thrones, but I heard the guy who played Joffrey would like just people would just like jeer at him and just like insult him on the street.
Yeah.
And he's like people are idiots.
Bradley, those people do not like Fly and also don't like JoJo's Part 6.
Subhuman.
Don't
brainless.
think they're subhuman. Just don't worry about them. What else? Yeah, Skylar's great. I feel like a lot of people I feel like I've seen this a lot where like on rewatch, knowing the evil within Walter helps you really kind of understand and appreciate Skylar. And that's when I really started to like, I went from like, oh, she's a cool character to like, oh, she's a really good character on rewatches. Those are all the main characters, I think. There's Marie. She's fun. I've seen some analysis where like Marie is like a mirror to Walter, but she's not as criminal. Where like she lashes out at the world and commits petty crimes to feel better about herself. I think she's just a fun character though. Like she's very funny and adds like a nice flavor texture to the family.
Say that I definitely viewed her as a a very 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 scaled down version of Walter.
Yes.
But she is able to kind of give an amount of self-reflection to know that, okay, these things I'm doing, I don't have to do them. if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Walt Jr. Some people are just like Walt Jr. sucks. What? He never did anything wrong.
Eats breakfast. It's the most important meal of the day.
And even the stint where he's like going by Flynn, it's like he doesn't even know who his dad is anymore. He makes the website for him. That's so sweet.
Yeah,
Um, my favorite Flynn slash Walter Jr. scene, two of them, is when he's talking to Walter and he's like, "The way you've been this past year, that's the way I don't want to remember you."
yeah,
He RJ Mitty was so good in that scene as an actor. Big props to the kid. Additionally, there is the scene where he lashes out at Walt when he calls him at the school, and he's just hysterically yelling, "You killed Uncle Hank! You killed Aunt Marie!" Also, him defending his mom and Ozymandias, like, God, that
yeah.
kid really goes through some shit. I appreciate
And
him.
he's like, I was about to say he's such a tool. I was about to say he's such a tool, but
What?
no,
Why?
I mean that in the sense that like
Oh,
he he's used very effectively,
yeah.
because like Walt's like biggest motivation is doing this for his family, and as he goes on, he sees his son get alienated from him, which is gonna be like a one of a dad's biggest fears, especially for Walt. And so I think having Walt Jr. in the show is just necessary because, like, I mean, God, okay, I can't even I can't even explain this. He's doing this for his family, and I don't know if he just doesn't have kids, it's gonna be a lot harder to sell that to people, I think.
And also by having a son that has these physical problems, it really hammers in that like, wow, this guy has a rough life at the start, which helps you understand Walter's motivations, even if he is a monster. Like he starts off at like very reasonable, understandable motivations. Um, we should talk about some of the villains. Let's rapid fire them. Tuco, man, every scene with Tuco is electrifying.
I'll say Tuco was like a huge ramp in stakes for the show. Like I get that he appeared in season one, but season one has very fast pacing. So by the time he appears, I think we have a good grasp on the characters and the kinds of threats they have faced. And when Tuco appears, us and the characters are like, holy shit, we were not prepared for this.
Dude's fucking insane. And all the Salamancas are like, Tio is this vindictive, disgusting, just I can't talk too much about him, but like he just knowing his past, like that guy is fucked up. He's so like greedy, he's so disrespectful, just a nasty man. But he cares about his family a lot.
Oh yeah.
That's the thing. The Salamancas are big into family. You got the
Sure.
cousins. The cousins like they don't talk much. They're just there to look cool. But I actually like their integration to the story because with all these well written characters, there's an element of Breaking Bad where which is like this is a little westerny. You know, we get like a little bit like heightened, and you get like these insane cartel badasses that are just forces of nature. And of course, like they're sparingly used, which makes sense. Like there's not that much you can do with them. But I thought Vince and the team used them really well. It's just like they're coming for your ass and they cannot be stopped. And like they fill up a nice half of a season.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I feel like there are moments where Breaking Bad gets very anime,
Yeah,
and, but you described it as Western, and I think that's more accurate. But I mean, Westerns are anime, so yeah.
of course. Um, but then there's the man himself, Gus.
What, dude? This is like a fucking Death Note antagonist right here.
Motherfucking Light Yagami shows up in the show.
He is a plotter, man.
He is he is persistent. He is analytical. He is patient, and he will get his way. You can tell this is a man that's been scheming for years, and it's all falling together now. He has his cook, he has his lab, he has his distribution. He slowly gets rid of all of his enemies to the point where all that's left is the Dawn. And even he's backed into a corner, but he's resourceful. He uses Jesse to get the upper hand, and at that point, he is undefeatable to the point where he's like, Walter, I will kill your infant daughter.
Oh my
Holy
god.
shit, dude!
Yeah, this man's. Whew.
And Carlo Esposito's acting is just like he goes from like cold psychopath so easily. He just like whenever Walter's like, I didn't put the bug in your car, like Hank is forcing me to do this, he's like, put it in my car, do it, and he gives you that horrifying smile, and it's just like, holy shit, dude, this guy's insane.
I feel like if any other actor played this character, they would just feel very, very different.
And like, this is what made Breaking Bad iconic, I think. It already had all these amazing moments. I think what made it explode was Walt versus Gus. You know, like,
Oh yeah,
that was a 2 season wide battle.
yeah.
And
The mind.
so many mind games and twists and turns. Ah, what a good fucking villain. Um, there's more to say about him that I can say in the future. Gus is a cool guy. It's a fascinating character. Um, okay, so an interesting thing about Breaking Bad, I think, is the final villains. And
Oh yeah.
a lot of people are like, this is a escalation down from Gus. I think the Nazis are a really good villain because after Walt has conquered anything that could hurt him, he becomes cocky and invincible. He's like Kira when he gets bites the dust, where he's just like, I am unbeatable now. So Walter creates his own enemy, and I think that's brilliant. That in the end of the show, what is his undoing is the enemy he brought into his own life. He got in contact with the Nazis through Todd for his greed and his violence. He used them as a tool, and then his reliance on them brought them into his life, and they're the ones that take everything from him.
Yeah, and like even before El Camino, I found Todd endlessly interesting.
He is one of the most fascinating villains.
And all of these people that are associated with Todd, these people, we've seen so many different monsters over the course of Breaking Bad, but these people are another breed of monster entirely. These are people, we've seen people without moral compasses. We've seen people who will do pretty much anything as long as you offer them enough money. These are guys without morals, and sometimes even money isn't enough. And sometimes giving them what they want isn't enough. These are people, when they decide on something, you just don't know what they're going to do.
The Nazis are actually fucking insane when you think about it. Like, they cold blood kill everyone. They have no tact. Like, Jack is a man of his word, and that's about it. He's following the street code. There is no, like, hierarchy of a cartel that is kind of like a mini fucked up government. It is Jack and his word, and he will kill your ass.
Yeah, because with other people, like with Gus or the cartel, it's like, oh, well, I have a trump card. You know, I can call this person that knows a guy who can tell them to stop. No one on earth can tell these guys to stop doing what they're doing.
And you get this sense of like Todd grew up in this, and that's why he's this fucked up sociopath who is super polite. And is Todd even like evil? He's just like so apathetic to human life.
Yeah, and the thing that's so interesting is how he differs to Jesse, because when he starts working with Walt, he's like the student that Walt would have always wanted. He knows nothing at the start, but he's so eager to learn, and he takes notes, and everything Walt tells him he takes to heart. But unlike Jesse, he has no heart.
Jesus. It's the scenes with Todd and El Camino are god tier, dude.
Oh yeah.
That is some Quentin Tarantino shit where you just walk into this apartment and he's like, oh yeah, it's pastel colors, and you just turn the corner and Jesse's like, what the fuck? There's a dead woman. And he's just like, he's cooking beans and bacon while talking about how he had to kill this woman, and he's like, Hey, don't you say she was stealing from me. She was a good lady. Just
Yeah, it's not
oh,
like, oh, she was a bitch, she deserved it. It's like I he's like, I'm sorry I had to do it. Like she was so nice, but what choice did I
and
have?
this is so in line with when he killed Drew Sharp. He's like,
Yeah,
"You guys said that we could not let anyone see. I put myself like for the mission. I thought about us." And you can almost understand where he's coming from. Like when you come down to it, did Todd not do the right thing at the train heist? Like as a criminal, it's just so fucked up to think about. It's his lack of remorse that is extra like messed up, and his lack of hesitation.
yeah, it's not what he did
It's how
so
he
much
did it.
as the fact that like it occurred to him to do that in the first place.
And like without hesitation, without asking anyone. Oh my god. Also, he was so fat in El Camino.
I'll say like the first thing I saw when looking up El Camino discussion is like, man, I didn't expect to see this much Todd. And I'm not talking about screen time.
Oh, he's great though. What a good actor. So
Yeah,
unnerving.
I love Todd very much.
Uh, I love Lydia. She's super fun. I love how haywire she is and like how business she is. I'm not gonna talk about her for too much. Just know that she's one of my favorite characters as well. She's delightful.
Yeah,
Um,
I would be hard pressed to find a character in the show that I didn't like.
Skinny Pete and Badger, especially good in El Camino, man. Skinny Pete's, bro, you're my hero. Almost like got a tear out of me.
Like,
That hits so hard.
it's like as I've been rewatching the show, they they just look up to Jesse like a god sometimes. Like sometimes they will go weeks without seeing him, and they'll just be like, "Yo, man, what have you been up to? Oh man, I bet you have like the best shit ever. Like, oh, what are we doing now? Are we gonna start a new empire?" Like
Yeah,
they
they're
think
so
he
down for it.
is the shit, but also they don't just view him as a tool to sell or get meth. They're also his friends. They've presumably known him since they were little, or at least high
Or high
school.
school, maybe, or like right after high school, you know?
Yeah.
Like, Skinny Pete is the one that got his connection with Tuco because he spent some time in jail.
Yeah.
Um, One thing that, like, I was really happy to see that they weren't on meth in El Camino. They were just smoking weed.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, thank God they didn't take Walter's money. Like, they bought cool chairs
Yeah.
instead of, like, blowing it all on meth. And I was like, oh, I'm
Good
glad
boy.
your lives are getting better. Um, so there's two main characters we haven't really talked about.
Who dat?
It is Saul and Mike. Now,
We should save this for the Better Call Saul
hear me
talk.
out. Yeah, you know now that Mike is a big part of Better Call Saul. When I say big part, he's half of it.
Yeah.
It's as much as their story. All I'm gonna say is Mike is one of the best characters already in Breaking Bad. Who does not like Mike?
Like I feel like there are some characters in fiction that like they might be almost universally loved, but there's like some guy out there who hates them. There are some characters who everybody hates, like, but I think there are some characters that like no human being has ever disliked, and Mike is one of those characters.
And here's the thing: I wouldn't say Mike is like I'm gonna use Gary Stu, but I'm not gonna say like he's not one of those characters that's super forced down your throat.
Yeah,
Mike has a modest amount of scenes. He's got a personality. He is not a good person. Like he is a criminal who kills people in cold blood and works for a huge empire and he like just there's so many scenes of him just straight murdering people without blinking an eye and it's interesting to think how he got there, wink wink nudge nudge, but it's also like but he has such a good code of ethics despite that. um
yeah. There are lines that even he won't cross, and like that's something that's really something considering he like threatened to break Saul's arms in his office for some not even critical information.
yeah, and it's like I'm going to borrow a line from Better Call Saul. Just
Yeah,
it's something you would know he would say. It's I've known good criminals and bad cops, and just like he has this line about knowing everything in between, like honorable thieves and bad like evil heroes kind of thing. Like something Taylor would say to justify herself.
yeah.
But when it's coming from Mike, it's like, no, this is the life you've lived, and you have seen it all, and I believe you.
Yeah, he has lived all that, you know.
Yeah, and like, man, he is a fucking good character. He's made even better. Like, he's he's doubled in goodness from Better Call Saul. And when you're already the best character, like in your show, arguably, then just imagine that times two, and that's what you get from like
Yeah.
what you learn. Um, Saul Goodman is the character to develop the least in Breaking Bad out of the main characters, but that's because he is the character who is most comfortable being himself.
And like,
He
man, he is so endlessly charming.
oh yeah.
Like from like the very first scene you ever see him, I'm just like, I love this character.
Oh yeah, he's a damn good lawyer, but he's a criminal lawyer, and he's got all these good schemes, and he's got all these good comedic moments, but he's also like he has a sense of ethic that is waverable, but like even when Mike is threatening to break his legs because Gus is forcing him to get something out of Saul, Saul's like, check my desk. Like that's where Jesse is after like the end of season at like around the end of season 3. And then he meets up and he's hiding Jesse in the laser tag. He's like, "Walter, I am sticking my neck out for you." And it's like he's willing to put his life on the line, and part of it is like all the money he can earn from like Walt and Jesse, but even like Saul is aware like this is really maybe not worth me sticking my neck out, but he still like does it for them.
And
Uh,
man, one thing I love about Saul, there are certain characters in works that I like it when they have kind of a static moral compass. And I say Saul has a static moral compass in Breaking Bad because I feel like by the time in his timeline that we're in Breaking Bad, he knows who he is. He knows what he is okay with and what he's not okay with. Um, and so he kind of keeps that same level of tolerance for bad things throughout Breaking Bad. And we can compare him to Walter, where whenever he's first introduced to the story, there are things he suggests Walter do that Walter is like, no, like that's never on the table. We're never
yeah.
going to do that.
Send them to Belize. I'll send you to Belize.
And so early on, Walter gets this idea that Saul is the corrupt one. If like there's nothing that I would do that he wouldn't do. Like if something's okay with me, obviously he's okay with it because he is morally worse than me. And then we skip forward 2 or 3 seasons, and we eventually get to the point where Walt is suggesting stuff that Saul is like, I no, like no, we're not going to do that. Like,
Yeah.
how could you even suggest that? And whenever you have a character who whenever they like kind of trade those positions from one character being the morally superior one to the other character being morally superior, I think it's just like a way to show how your character has changed without outright saying it.
Absolutely. And like to feed onto that, like I was saying, Saul knows who he is, and a big part of Breaking Bad is Walter and Jesse finding out who they are, who they can
Yeah.
be. And it's such a cool contrast to have this character. It's like, no, I know who I am, and I am comfortable with that. And I'm just gonna say, Saul's a great character. Better Call Saul has made him the best character in this franchise.
Whew.
I love this man. He also has hurt me so much.
You love
Um, I there has never been a character who has actually like made me so upset as a viewer where I'm like, you're actually hurting me, Saul, not the characters in the show. You're doing this to me. So Saul's great, and that's I think that covers all the real characters worth talking about.
yeah.
Um, aside from Joe from the fucking uh, junkyard, and Gomi is great.
Yeah,
Fucking
they exist, you know.
they,
And they're
they're all
cool.
good. Shout outs to Victor and Gail. Rest in peace, homies. I think thematically we touched on like this. Just all the main theme is like, yeah, like everyone's kind of trying to deal with guilt in their own way. I think that's a big part, especially of Walter and Jesse. Um, the Fly is a big part of that. You have scenes later on in the seasons where the Fly comes back and Walt is ignoring it, and it's like right when he's about to. It's right after he kills Mike. Right at that point, like he's like nothing can stop me at this point. Like not even guilt. He does come to conquer it, though. By the end, when Hank dies, it is too much for him to take.
Yeah.
And then finally, there's like just the evil that Walt becomes. You know, it's fascinating, and he keeps going down this slippery slope and just plummets into it, and he gets a little bit of a redemption at the end. But the things he's done to get to that point are just horrifying. And what a good character.
Yeah.
Do you have any closing thoughts on our frankly gargantuan Breaking Bad discussion?
Yeah. I think as far as like what is Breaking Bad about, I think a lot of people, for a lot of people, and also me for a really long time, it's kind of among other themes. It's kind of like that kind of doing wrong things for the right reason kind of themes, and I don't know if that's the case anymore. I think the show makes a case for itself and acknowledges that, like, no, Walter wasn't doing the wrong things for the right reasons. He was doing the wrong things for the wrong reasons. And I think it is much more about guilt than trying to justify doing bad things.
Yeah.
And
The escaping of guilt
yeah, there's a
and
lot of
rejection of it.
comparing between characters who may do equivalently bad things, but some of them feel guilt, like Jesse, and some of them don't, like Walt. And
Yeah.
I think that's what the show's about.
Those themes carry on to other shows
Yeah.
also. And I'll raise you one. In the very first episode, you get the idea that chemistry is the study of change, and Breaking Bad is the study of change.
Boom.
You know what? Let's just drop it there. I think that's a good one to end it on.
Breaking Bad, go watch it.
Please go watch it.
Listening to this still and you haven't watched the show, I'm sorry.